I'm going to present an update on my literature archive because last year I did a full explanation and this year I will tell you what's new on my scanning project.
Oh, we got that problem.
So the website is literature.hpcalc.org and the original plan for it was to be a reliable host for HP source documentation, including all the community-made scans and also select manuals that I would scan myself to fill in the gaps. I put the initial site online with just the HP produced manuals, in other words, PDFs that came from their website over the years, but many of which had been lost in August of 2020. And at the October 2020 HPCC virtual conference, I did a soft launch of it just for the attendees of that conference. At that point, I had added some more scans the community had done, but had not done much past that. Then I was talking to Richard Nelson about borrowing a small number of manuals, maybe 20 or so from him, to fill in gaps that had not previously been scanned or had been scanned at very poor quality. In talking with Richard, I discovered that he had hundreds of books, and not only that, but he wasn't going to have them for much longer because he was getting rid of his collection. He had almost every manual, many third-party books, and he was willing to lend them to me before getting rid of them so I could scan them. So I was thinking, okay, well, I will scan the 200 or 300 books that he has, and he started shipping me books at March 2021. Well, I ended up borrowing everything that Richard had, one copy of everything, which ended up being a lot more books than originally expected. So I changed the goal of the site to instead be one to contain all HP calculator documentation. In other words, not just the original official PDFs from HP, but also original PDFs that were produced by other people, many of which were on my main hpcalc.org site, but within the file archive, such as books on programming. And then also to make the highest feasible quality scans of everything that was never produced or released electronically. What I mean by that is scanning all at 600 dpi, 24-bit color, or 8-bit gray, and then downsampling to 400 dpi with 8-bit color or 4-bit gray with OCR for the final PDFs. This includes all HP manuals that weren't electronically released, plus as many third-party books related to HP calculators that I could find. As I said, I have full details about this in my 2021 presentation. At that point, I think I'd said I was something like 60+% done, but in reality I was maybe 50% done, based on what I've done so far. At this point, however, it's looking really good. The bulk of the scanning is done. I scanned all the books I have, which is about 40 of them, except there are a few buried in my house somewhere I need to find and scan. I scanned all of Richard's books. It was close to 600 books. And also he has a few more that were buried in his house. He's found about a half dozen so far, and he'll ship them to me once he's done cleaning through everything. And finally, Bob Prosperi has helped out because he has a fairly good-sized collection as well, and he's lent me about 50 books also, and another 30 or so coming. That will fill in pretty much all the gaps on the HP produced books.
Sorry.
Third-party ones are still...
No, I was reading it more out.
Yeah, so on my next slide, so I had a Canon flatbed scanner I was using for some of the scans. Most I was doing with an ADF, automatic document feeder, a Fujitsu, and the remainder I was using a flatbed for either because they weren't suitable for scanning on the ADF or I didn't want to cut the books to scan them. So that was a good excuse to buy the Epson P850 Pro I had my eyes on for some years. Unfortunately, the price has been going up about 10% a year for the last quite a few years. And I got lucky, I bought it this summer, and a few days later the price went up another $150.
Wow.
But it has a feature that I'm finding very handy, and I mentioned in my presentation last year that when you're scanning dual-sided pages, sometimes the text from the backside bleeds through. And my solution to that was on my flatbed. The document mat is a white mat with padding behind it. And I bought some black vinyl, adhesive vinyl that I put over that to make it a black background. Then the bleeding was no longer as much of a concern. Now with this Epson, it has a transparency scanning feature, which means that the lid is actually glass with a light behind it. And then it has an insert, a document mat insert that you put in for scanning opaque items like paper. So I went to the spare parts place and bought another document mat and put the black vinyl on that. So I have one that's white for scanning single-sided things and one that's black for scanning documents that are printed on both sides. So I get the best of both worlds just by sliding in and out the mat. That's just a screenshot from the manual. So raw numbers, the collection right now, website 1,450 books as of the beginning of this week. 80,000 pages and a little over 500 books are original PDFs that came from HP. Another close to 7,000 are books that HP had scanned before putting on their website, usually ones from the 90s that they'd still recently been selling but had never made PDFs for. Another over 80,338 pages and 684 books are ones I've scanned myself over the last 2 years. Another 9,500 of original PDFs from the community. 5 of them were actually made by myself, but the other 57 were from others in the community. And then finally, about 21,000 pages, 162 books that other people had scanned. I cleaned up the scans and made them into OCR PDFs. So grand total, about 198,000 pages, 33.4 gigabytes on that website, and also on the USB drive. Here's the progress over time of the site. You can see the total number of pages when I first launched it in August 2020 was maybe, 70,000, something like that. And 500 items. Those were just the PDFs from HP. That you can see throughout the fall of 2020 as I was scanning a few things and cleaning up community-produced scans. Then I hit a plateau around Christmas. At that point I thought, I'm basically done. And that's when I realized I'd get a lot more books from Richard, and it's flat for a while, then it starts growing a little bit more. There's that peak you see in the summer of 2021, that was not me scanning. That was when I was talking to Cyril, and it turned out Cyril had quite a few PDFs of HP manuals that had never made it to the HP website, or if they had, I'd never seen them. So that added a good number, mostly foreign language materials, and for some of the more, the less common HP calculators from recent years.
From the department
Yes.
of nitpicking, how can the number of items be greater than the number of pages?
Oh, there are 2 different scales here.
Oh,
The blue scale is the number of items at 1450 on the right. The yellow scale is the number of
I
pages
see, it's
on the left.
Sorry.
Yes.
Did you have any way of tracking the log on and onto your site and downloading?
Yes, I do have logs. The problem is the usefulness of them, because a lot of the access to the website is through bots. Bots like spiders, Google and Bing and stuff like that are cataloging all of the materials repeatedly. And then also there are a lot of automated downloads people do too. So they may be downloading the entire 30 gigabytes at once, but they're not really looking at it.
You wouldn't consider the numbers accurate then?
So it's hard to get a real number for how many real people are doing things and reading manuals.
You need to put
But what I can say,
filter on there, I'm not a bot, you know?
right. The problem is I might fail that, because all these websites keep thinking I'm a bot. I don't understand. But anyway, the total traffic of this documentation site is approaching a terabyte per month. So it's a fair amount of activity.
Right.
The next chart here, this just shows what I have scanned. This is my rate of scanning. So you can see I was at 0 pages in September 2020, 0 documents, and it's gone up. You see a couple plateaus there where last summer and this summer, both times I said I'm going to take a month and just get away from scanning for my sanity. I think this has definitely been at the expense of my health. I am scanning all my free time. I'm using the laptop in the bus and the train on the way to work, cleaning up scans. I'm using the laptop in bed, getting ready to sleep. I'm using the laptop while eating.
When you wake up in the hotel?
Pretty much. Not today because yesterday, but yeah, in hotels I've worked on it. So yes, the good thing is I am almost done because I need a break from all the scanning. But as you can see, there are the two plateaus, but the plateau this summer wasn't quite as flat as it could have been because before I took my month break, I'd actually scanned 5 books and then cleaned them up. And then Jean mailed me 2 400-page books while I was on vacation. And I thankfully brought my scanner with me on vacation and scanned them. So yeah, here you go, 80,338 pages as of this week.
What resolution do you usually scan to, like 300 dots per inch or?
I scan everything at 600 dots per inch, do all my processing there, and then I downsample to 400 for the final PDF. I do have, however, keep all of the 600 dpi 24-bit images, so at some point in the future, I could make full quality PDFs, but they'd be about 4 times the size and a very minimal additional quality. So the current status of it right now, I'm aware of 555 different English language HP manuals and other documentation. Among the calculator owner's manuals, almost all are scanned, I'm just missing 2. The quick references, same thing, just missing 2. Accessories and modules, I'm missing about 16. Application books, I'm missing about 27. User's library books, missing about 13, although I just got 2 of them from David. So that will complete the 6797 solutions. Then the service manuals, I do have most of them, but many of the ones that I have are photocopies, so it might be nice to get the originals. And I'm only missing 5 entirely, but another dozen or so I just have photocopies scanned.
Is there a definitive list of which ones were made?
That has been the problem. I am basically making trying to make as definitive a list as possible by going through all the different source materials and finding what references, what part numbers. And that's been part of this project too that I'll get to in a bit. So no, there isn't a definitive list that I know of, but I'm
So
trying
when
to
you say
get
you're
one.
missing 5, you've
Of
seen
what I-
5 crap copies that you want to make good ones and then,
Not even necessarily that. I've seen ones that don't have scans, but I've seen a reference to the part number somewhere,
okay.
so I know they exist. Then finally, the last section of the English language stuff are the no-mos, the internals. And I've really not scanned many of those at all. We're talking about like the 71 IDS and stuff like that. Then the non-English materials, that I have almost nothing of. So I'm aware of 387 in existence, most of which have never been scanned by anybody. I've only scanned 23. There may even be more than that, but it's harder for me to find out what's available not in English. And finally, the third-party materials, I've gotten through about a third. I'm aware of 755 books produced by other companies and individuals about HP calculators. I've got 229 scanned. But some, maybe another 100 or so have been scanned by others. Yes?
Do you have a list that we can look at so we can compare?
Yes, I'll get to that.
Yeah. Why don't we, at least as a start, publish that list on our list?
It's already on the web.
Huh?
It's already on the web.
he's going to show it.
I'm going to show it to you, yes.
Oh, good, excellent.
It's been on the web for a few months now.
Eric,
Yes.
question. You said how many of the, okay, some of the manuals are available, so I guess when you said you cut the spine and then you can feed them.
Yeah, well, I'll get to that.
Good.
So some of the key additions since my presentation at last year's conference, I have almost all the Easy Course books. Now they're fun to read because they're beautifully illustrated. The covers are usually watercolored, but even throughout all the pages there are many humorous drawings. And I've done most of the Voyager ones, the Pioneer ones, with the exception of the 16C I've not been able to borrow yet. And then there may have been a 17B2 and a 19B2 one, I'm not sure. I know a 17, there are, okay. Then, because I've done the 17B and 19B, but not the,
Is there definitely a 16C one of those? I've never seen it.
I've seen it listed in multiple catalogs,
Really?
so I'm sure it exists. Then I finished out the classic series. I've been, in addition to borrowing manuals, I've been buying some on eBay and stuff like that, partially for calculators I own that don't have manuals, so I'm building up my manuals, and also I've been buying ones just for the purpose of scanning. The application books, I've scanned many of them over the last year. Here's just a sample, some from the Series E, the 45, some of the Pioneers, the 28C, 67, 97, 65. Yes?
Look at if there's some missing, I have them all.
These are the ones I have scanned.
Yeah,
Oh, you have them all? Okay.
yeah.
They're just a few I'm missing.
In a minute, he's gonna show how to see the what he doesn't have list,
Okay.
which is much easier to manage than what he does.
The users library solutions, I scanned a bunch of those for the 75, 71. The 41 ones there I picture, I'd already scanned almost all of those, but I was able to find barcodes too, so I added the barcodes to those existing scans. And then a lot of other manuals, you can see some Pioneers and a number of other models as well. Finally, third-party books. At HHC 2021, Namir sent me a 35S statistics book I hadn't even realized existed, so that's not scanned, but it's the one original document that's been added in the last year. Then a number of other interesting books. You can see the PPC ROM manual is now there, very high quality scan. The HPIL book that Sylvain had mentioned is there. A book on astronomical formula that isn't quite specific to HP calculators, but it's a fairly well-known one by Jean Meus. Then French books, more of the grapevine books from Dan Coffin. The G series version of Bill Wicks's HP48 Insights, Jake's 16C emulator library manual, and then a few others. I've also scanned some internal HP documentation that might be interesting from the last year, such as the 1982 edition of the HP 97 service manual, the Series E service manual, then some marketing and sales documentation for the 41, also for the Series 10, the 41 IC specifications, which I think had been scanned before, but this is a little cleaner. And then I got volume 1 of the HP 71 IDS scan. That was a two-up document that I changed to 1-up. Now there's also a volume 2 and a volume 3. Black and white scans have been done by at least 2 others. Now Eric Smith has done a set of scans, and also the Australian HP Computer Museum has a separate scan. But all the scans I've seen have been for the 1BBBB version. I know there exist, or were supposed to exist, 2 CCCC printouts. I've seen part numbers for them. I've not found if anyone has them or not.
Now, François has been searching for them for years.
So like
Okay.
10 years.
Okay.
He's not able to.
Once a year, he puts a post, anyone buy?
Okay. So I might just try to rescan the 1BBB ones to get a little, my highest quality archival grade scan, if possible. I know most of the ones I've seen have been the PPC or CHU distributed photocopies, but if anyone has the originals, that'd be even better.
I think I have an original, I know I have an original too, I don't know about 3.
Okay.
I'm not sure
Okay.
about 3. I thought it was stupid to spend that money.
I don't
for
think there is an original, because HP would have the original, and everything they send out would be photo, you know.
Well, I mean, in this case, a full size rather than change to 2-up or 4-up.
Right,
No.
HP shipped them as 2-up and 4-up.
Yeah, okay.
Even the ones, if you purchased from HP, it
They-
was not
yeah.
1-up. None of
And
them.
that's okay. I found doing the 2-up scan, I was able to get a fair bit better quality than the previous ones with my
The
scanning.
volume 3 that I scanned that was 4-up, I scanned at 600 dpi, which was the most I was able to at the time, and then I converted it.
Right,
So
but it's monochrome and I'm
it's-
doing grayscale.
It's monochrome, and the physical copy I had, I was not the purchaser. It was something that HP had sold, and I got it from someone else. And the first few pages were somewhat damaged. I thought they were still basically kind of readable, but not optimal.
Okay.
So having a better scan of those would be wonderful.
Yeah. I've done OCR and then the OCR is middling. Sometimes it works, but usually a lot of the details are wrong.
I think we've talked about that before, but sort of OCR where it puts the scan behind the image so that you can still see.
That's exactly how I do
Yeah.
it. That's everything that I scan. I have an OCR layer added on top of the image, so that you can search it, but you still see the original scan. And it's remarkably good in many cases. So some examples of the quality that I'm going for in scans compared to existing scans. Here you have an applications book, and the left side is the original black and white scan. It's probably hard to see from the distance there, but the right side is my color scan with additional color and additional resolution. Here's an example of the black and white one. Again, from a distance, you may not be able to tell, but the left one has a lot of dithering and stuff like that, and the right one is a grayscale, higher resolution scan. Here's an example of one where there are some existing good quality scans and manuals, but I found the color is oftentimes not very good. In this case, the shadows are so dark that all the details are lost in the shadows on the left. So when I rescan them, you get a lot more detail in the shadows. You can actually read the text on the calculator, for example. Another example, sometimes the highlights get blown out. You can see that it's not too bad on the left, but you can see in the artwork, the star is just all white. And the text, again, maybe hard to see, but all the black text has a green tinge to it. And whenever I do a color scan, I convert the black to actual black or grayscale, so you don't get that color shifting. Finally, here's an example when I'll put together. The left side is an existing scan of the HP55. You can see the cropping was not ideal. There's extra black at the bottom. The top of the page is cut off. The edges are a little curled up and not quite cropped right. And you've got the whole two-up scanned at once with the binding in the middle. On the right is my scan where I've separated the pages. Here I have my PDF viewer set to show side-by-side, so you still see the side-by-side, but you can also see one at a time if you wanted to view it vertically on your phone or whatever, one page at a time. Then also I have my navigation tree on the left, and of course everything's in color and aligned straight, everything's straight.
Speaking of cropping issues, one of the things that drives me nuts is I find places where there are documents in the scan, and it's like, okay, I'm glad to get some scan, but every page is cropped to a different size.
That is another thing that bothers me. It's like 8.25 by 11.1, 8.28 by 12. Each one's a little different. But 8.5. If it's 8.5 by 11, every page is 8.5 by 11, so you don't see the page jumping around as the size varies. That bothered me about a lot of existing scans.
It's quiet, but most people in the room are going, yeah, it's not just me. It's not just me.
Right.
How do you hold the books flat?
Now I'm going to get to the next slide. So how can you help? One is by lending me books to scan. Now that I've scanned basically all the big collections, all that I'm expecting now are books here and there coming trickling in. So how do I scan them? To make it easiest, I do try to run most through the ADF, which means I have to unbind them before I can run them through. If they're spiral bound, comb bound, wire bound, or stapled, it's not a problem for me to remove the binding without damage, or at least without noticeable damage, then put them back together again after scanning, and it'll look basically like it did before. The issue, though, are the ones with perfect binding, soft-covered, hard-covered books. At the moment, I would say, if you don't want me to cut them, don't lend them to me, because I want to focus on getting as much done as possible. However, at some point, I will say, okay, I'll borrow them, I will scan the flatbed without having to cut the bindings off. Now, there are some disadvantages of the flatbed. First of all, it's a whole lot more manual effort. Second of all, I have to hold it just right so I don't get shadows from the binding, the curved part in the middle. And third of all, there is a possibility, depending on the book and the binding type, by pressing it flat, it could cause some damage to the binding as well. So that's something to be careful with, and it may be, I see one say, oh, I guess I can't scan it because I would have to damage to scan it. Yes?
Eric, I think there's a red book on the table behind you, I believe.
By William Volt.
Yes.
That I think you scanned.
Yeah.
Why don't you pass that around?
Yeah, so there's one book, I got this from Craig this summer, and he said I could do whatever with it, so it's a hardbound book, and I cut off the binding. And this was my very first experiment of trying to rebind a hardcover book.
You need Schwartz. Schwartz can do a whole presentation.
Actually, I've seen his presentation and I was inspired by that. So yes, what I did is after I had all the pages cut off, I've got my stack paper cutter that slices it all straight. Then I clamped them between two pieces of wood with 2 C-clamps, and then put PVA glue right along there, put 3 coats of that down to make the binding. And it's still, a few of the pages are not held in as well as they could be. Once I did that, then I used a combination of glue and bookbinding tape to put it back into the
Is that the
back
original
book.
cover then?
So this is still the original cover. I'll pass this around.
Remove it.
But be a little careful, it's not as strong as the original by far, but it was my very first attempt.
So no life, pretty much.
Yeah, but at least the bulk of it's done so I can have a little more life, maybe get some exercise again for a change. I definitely gained weight during the course of this project. One thing that can potentially save me time is if you're willing to scan them for me, if you can do 600 dpi grayscale or color scans, minimal compression, TIFF is ideal, or some kind of lossless compression, or JPEG with very high quality settings. Put it on Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive, whatever to get them to be, then I can do my processing. But I want to make sure that if you do that, minimize any processing done by your scanning software, because that can be counterproductive. It can take me more time to reverse bad processing done by scanning software than to just scan it in myself.
I would point out, since you mentioned TIFF, be aware though that TIFF is a container format that can
Right.
contain almost anything. So
Right,
just saying I'm going to scan it to TIFF doesn't really tell us what it is.
that's true. And most scanning software, if you pick TIFF, it'll either be uncompressed or it'll be LZW compression, but yes, it could be lossy too, or there are other compression formats supported. But yes, lossy compression or no compression, lossy compression's or lossless compression's ideal, lossy with minimal compression's next. So, final thing that's been asked several times is, how do you know what I haven't scanned? And I'm going to do a little demo on the live website to show how that works. So this is the main webpage at literature.hpcalc.org. And at the top, there is a link here that says the full master list of all known HP calculator literature. One thing One thing I should mention, I don't know why, my JavaScript skills are not very good, and the filtering on this is super fast on Firefox 95% of the time, but it's super slow on Chrome. I don't know why Chrome is very slow at my JavaScript, but it is. So I recommend Firefox for doing filtering on this. Here, this shows everything on here. If we scroll down to the end, it's 2,240 known books. And I can filter it like I can say, let's just see English language, and it will show me just the English language materials here. And then let's just say I want to see HPIL stuff. I can take HPIL, and it filters down to these are the ones that just have HPIL in them. If we look on the right side here, you can see there's a column for format, and some of them say scan pending. That means that someone has told me they're going to be sending me the book to scan, I just haven't scanned it yet. Or I have the book on hand and I haven't scanned it. If you click on one, it'll say in the details, not yet online, book promised to be lent to me to scan, please be patient. If we go back, let's clear out this filter. And you can see some of them say missing under format. That means that I do not have a scan of it. I do not know of anyone who has a copy who could lend it to me. And if it says, then it also means that I am not aware of any scans any other people have done. If you scroll down more, you might see some, in fact, if we sort by download here, if you click on a tab, it sorts by it, on a column, I mean. Some of these say offsite. What that means is these are books that have been scanned by other individuals, and I don't have it in my collection. Like if I click on this one right here, this is actually one of the ones that David just lent to me. It says the scan is available in the HP Museum USB drive collection. And some of the others, click on it, it might say scan available in the Australian HP Computer Museum download collection, or it may say available in hp41.org. It just means other sites have scans of them, but I don't. Those are also candidates for me to rescan. In some ways, the top priority are all the ones that are saying missing in this third to last column. And you go to the top, you can sort by format. And again, I'm still filtering on English here, so I'm only seeing English language materials. And there's black and white scan, color scan, grayscale scan, and these are all ones that say missing. These are all books that I don't have. These are original, and these are scan pending. I can filter it again if I go by authors. I can say Hewlett Packard, and now it only shows me the ones from Hewlett Packard that I'm missing, which is a very small number that are entirely missing. And then if we go to the bottom, there's a smaller number that are here that are off-site. In other words, have only been scanned by others. Does that answer everyone's questions about how to find out what I don't have?
We do have time.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time.